Good afternoon. Today we have with us Dr. David Patient, the Associate Professor and Academic Director of Catolica Lisbon School of Business, Portugal. He has his PhD at University of British Columbia, Canada. Dr. David Patient teaches courses in communication, organizational behavior, and human resource management. So we would like to ask a few questions in this session.
I think you're going to be determined to make a good impression. But one way to make a really good impression is to spend a lot of time. The first few months, it's kind of a honeymoon period, listening and asking questions. Okay? It's not always easy to ask questions, and sometimes instead of listening, we think the most important part of communication is to show what we know. But as a new graduate, I would take those first few months. Now, I'm not saying that you should go there and not say anything. On the contrary, you should be active. You should be trying to connect with people. They love to give advice, and if you want to get people's support, a good way to get their support is to ask for their advice. Okay. I think the most important part of communication is trying to understand your audience, which is something we've talked a lot about in different ways, and the same applies in other social situations. These are people you're going to be working with, and if you're going to work productively with them, you really want to learn as much about them as possible. Okay? Appreciate that they're different than you, and sometimes, especially as young people, we don't always realize that. That people have different interests and different motivations, different styles of work, and different ways of doing things. You should be curious about those things. Okay? And so in the workplace generally, but especially when you first arrive, you should be asking people lots of questions. Okay? You should be open to finding out different ways of doing things. Negative feedback is one type of bad news that we have to give people. And like other types of bad news, in fact, it can be really important. And how we deliver it can also be really important. But also, when we have, negative feedback to give, we're often a bit nervous. And so, in a lot of situations, people avoid giving it. Okay? Or they say postpone it, or they do it unclearly. I would make a couple of very quick points. Okay, you should take feedback seriously, right? And when you take something seriously, you prepare for it. Okay, you think, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to show that I take this seriously. Okay, because for the person receiving feedback, it's a tough situation, and you need to demonstrate that your intentions are. The other thing that's important is to be specific. It's not very helpful if we tell someone, you should be more professional. What people want to know is specifically what can I do differently? What am I doing? Maybe that's not working well. But what actions can I take? Or what actions can I take differently that will make me more effective? Other things with feedback is, in social situations, we like to think that things are balanced, and sometimes it's tough being the one receiving feedback. Okay? A way to make this more balanced is to make sure that feedback goes both ways. My final point is with regard to positive feedback. I would say that any type of feedback is better than none. This week has gone very fast. Okay? In fact, I was trying to figure out yesterday how many times I've been here, and it's my 7th trip to Myra. Okay, so in 3 years' time, we'll be celebrating the 10th year that which will also be the 10th year of Myra because I was invited to come here from the very beginning. Because I've been here so many times, it's really nice to come back and to see familiar colleagues. You know, it's nice to see how the programs and the reputation of Myra are developing. Okay. It's nice when I come one year to see the students from the previous year and to find out how they're doing. So that part is nice for me. As you can imagine, India and Mysore is very different than Europe, where I live now, and Canada, where I lived before. And I find that really stimulating. It's hard to, you know, to meet my responsibilities at home and also travel a lot. But one thing that I've been strict about is to keep my trips to Myra because that's a relationship and that's a trip that I enjoy very much. I'm happy with the format, you know, that we're experimenting with, which is these short, focused, intensive. So I work at Catolica Lisbon now, where I've been for the last 13 years. So as you know, I've been at Catolica Lisbon in Portugal for about 13 years. So that's my main reference point. But I also visit other schools, both to work with colleagues on research and sometimes also to teach them. You know, Myra, compared to the other places that I go to, it's a younger school, okay, and that's challenging, which means you're still, you know, trying to establish your reputation, but it's also exciting because you're building a culture. And I think for the students, the first groups of students in a new school, they have a really big influence. You know, they have a chance to really set the direction and the culture of the institution. The facilities are beautiful. Okay, you know, the buildings are as nice as anywhere I go. You know, this is a beautiful conference room. You know, the classrooms are nice. And the architecture is spectacular. So I think in that regard, you know, Myra can compare themselves favorably to just about anywhere. That Myra is building, you know, a group of resident faculty, which I think is really important. You know, it's tempting for me to say that everything is about communication because that's what I love and that's what I teach. And that would be an exaggeration. But in fact, learning how to communicate is one of the most important things. And it's one of the things also that is under your control. You know, I think, you know, students and other professionals also, they need to learn, you know, it's not only about doing good work. Okay? It's about, you know, motivating other people. It's about how you present the work. So I think, you know, the business, you know, communication skills and strategies, you know, they should be part of the toolkit of all students. Okay? But they shouldn't be regarded as, you know, really an end goal. I think some learning, you know, that you're given a framework and then you understand it and then you move on to the next thing. I think of communication very differently. You know, I think of all of us as works in progress. I think of communication as something where we all make mistakes and we all have strong points. It's something that we need to continually be working on. You know, it's the school itself is larger and there's a lot of people. Okay, so our master's program now admits about 400 students a year. About half of them are international, lots of German students. Okay, that's our biggest population of international students. Lots of people and lots of languages being spoken. Okay. You know, the food is going to be very different, okay, than India. You know, in Portugal, you're still mostly equal Portuguese food. Okay. Interesting but challenging for vegetarians. People eat a lot of meat and they eat a lot of fish. You know, I think some things are similar. You know, Lisbon's a pretty noisy city, noisy drivers. You have beautiful nature close to the city, so I think that is probably similar. You may find that people in the master's program in Catolica are more specialized, and that has advantages and disadvantages. And I think the model here with your MBA or your MBA equivalent is that people still do a very broad degree, okay? And which is what we have in our MBA, but in our MSc, you know, people are increasingly specialized. Almost all of them have a background in management or economics. Okay? Whereas, you know, I know in my class here, the most common background is still engineering.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your valuable.
Okay, you're welcome. It's always a pleasure to come to Myra, and it's always a pleasure to talk with the students.